Chandragupta is a board war game designed by Stephen R.Welch and released in 2008 by GMT Games as part of the Great Battles of History series of games on ancient warfare. Chandragupta simulates battles fought by the Mauryan dynasty in ancient India, and in so doing, attempts to illuminate the features, challenges, and unique attributes of the Indian military system and culture during this period. Gameplay. The game is traditional hex and counter style game. The game maps are covered with an hexagonal grid, each hex representing 70 yards of distance. Each turn represents about 15 to 20 minutes, although the rules are designed assuming a loose time scale. Each counter represents 300 to 1,000 fighting troops, depending on size and type. Since little is known about the terrain, numbers of men or types of units engaged, methods of combat, leaders and so on, these games, despite their high level of detail, remain essentially speculative and fictional in nature. Play of Chandragupta follows the general sequence of the other hex and counter-style board games, each player taking turns moving units, conducting combat, and resolving combat using an odds-based combat results table using a die. As with the other games in the GBoH series, rules for leadership and command and control are emphasized, and players have the opportunity to conduct extra moves and/or trump an opponent, effectively cancelling activation of an opponent's leader. Combat results generally result in rout and/or retreat, and victory is achieved by forcing an opponent's army to quit the field when a certain threshold of losses has been achieved, or by obtaining a specific territorial objective. Indian military system. Using period sources as well as research from largely Indian military historians, Chandragupta attempts to model specific features of what is believed to have been common features of the Mauryan military system. One of the most distinctive features is the Katarang Bala, or the fourfold army consisting of foot soldiers, car warriors, or chariots, elephants, and cavalry. Deployment of the Katarang Bala remained remarkably consistent throughout the period following the Vedic period. Through Arab invasion in 7th century AD, the game simulates the Kataranga Bala by representing the four divisions with distinctive counters whose use in play is governed by specific rules for movement, combat, and command and control. Another feature of the ancient Indian military system simulated in Chandragupta are rules for troop classes, based on a classification system with a long tradition preceding the Mauryan era. The classifications were hierarchical. At the apex of the hierarchy were the Maula, or hereditary, troops, who were professional soldiers and largely of the Kshatriya warrior caste. Next were the Bhrta, or mercenary class of troops, followed by the Srenis or Srenibala, who were essentially armed trade guild levies, and lastly the Atavibalam, or tribal levies. The game Chandragupta attempts to simulate the differing qualities of morale, leadership, and fighting ability of these various troop classes. Other subclasses, such as Mitra and Amitra, but for interest of playability and simplicity the designers chose not to represent these additional classes in Chandragupta. Scenarios. Chandragupta has 10 scenarios which simulate major battles from the founding of the Mauryan dynasty under Chandragupta Maurya, through the Battle of Kalinga waged by Chandragupta's grandson, Ashoka. Pataliputra, California 219 BCE, Chandragupta's first attempt to overthrow the Nanda dynasty, under the leadership of his mentor, the Brahman Chanakya. This inaugural battle did not go well for Chandragupta, as he and his insurgents brashly attacked the capital without having consolidated their power base among the hereditary military class. By all accounts they were defeated, forcing them to regroup in the countryside to build up their military strength and political support. The game posits a set-piece battle, with the Nandan imperial army facing down a rebellion of Chandragupta's mercenaries and allied insurgents on the plains outside of Pataliputra, the capital city of Magadha, California. 317 BC. Though Ugrasena Nanda apparently was a great conqueror and able ruler, his rich and powerful sons were not. As Ugrasena grew older, his sons' greed and corruption became intolerable, using this as well as the Nanda's lowness of birth to drum up popular support of their rebellion. Chanakya and Chandragupta began to broaden their anti-Nanda coalition among the freedom-loving clans and princes of Punjab and Sindh, most of whom had given stout resistance to the foreign invader Alexander. They find the military support they had been seeking, this time with the help of the chieftain Parvatakar and his brother Vairadakar. The game speculates that the battle took place near a military camp, and provides a model of an ancient Indian military camp on the map board. Revolt of Malaya Ketu, California. 317 BC. This scenario is based on events from the play Mudra Rakshasa, which, per Bhargava, was probably based on events which actually occurred. Having won power with the help of independent tribes and principalities, Chandragupta promptly evades the pre-war promises he had made them. Betrayed, the tribal chieftains rise against Chandragupta. The revolt is led by the son of Parvatakar, named Malaya Ketu, with the help of 5 other chiefs and an ex-minister of the Nanda regime named Rakshasa. Chanakya gets to work, employing cunning against the rebels, e.g., he has several of Malaya Ketu's allies poison and uses guile to sow dissension among the tribes. The game uses the Indian military camp, as described by Kautilya in the Arthashastra, as the centerpiece of the scenario. The designers posit an attack by Chanakya upon the camp at night. Takshashila, California. 316 BC. After overthrowing the Nandis, Chandragupta had to justify his new dynasty by proving it able to secure the protection of the people against foreign invasion by the Greeks. Takshashila was at the time under the joint rule of the Indian king Amba, who had allied himself years earlier with Alexander against his rival king Puru, and the Thracian general Eudemus, a successor of Philip. When Eudemus treacherously has Puru murdered, a native revolt begins. Chandragupta transforms the revolt into an organized military action against Takshashila. Eudemus is not committed to this battle. His joint rule with Amba was meant to be temporary, but his permanent appointment as satrap was never made. He quits India to later help Eumenes in his fight against Antipater, and the remaining Greek officers remaining are put to the sword. The battle takes place in the valley of the Tamranala River, bounded by rugged hills overlooking Takshashila from the east. In the center of the city is its temple and palace. The game map is based upon topographical maps drawn by archaeologist J. M. Marshall's A Guide to Taxila, Gandhara. 304 BC. According to Granger, after his stalemate with Antigonus in 308, Seleucus conquers Bactria and then proceeds to Gandhara on India's western frontier, marching through Oxyates' satrapy of Paropamisadeh and then down the Kabul River. He crosses at the confluence of the Indus somewhere in the vicinity of modern Attic in Pakistan. On the east bank of the Indus, Chandragupta confronts him. With his back to the river, Seleucus fought to what was possibly a tactical draw, but it was a strategic loss, having gambled so far from home but failing to achieve a victory. Seleucus is gifted 500 war elephants from the Mauryan emperor in exchange for the surrender of his possessions in the Indus Valley, Arachosia, and Gedrosia. Sources suggest that the cession of these territories were treated as the dower of Seleucus' daughter in her marriage to Chandragupta's son, Bindusara. The game deploys Seleucus squeezed close to the sands and mud of the Indus River at his back, leaving him with little room to maneuver. Revolt in the Provinces, California 275 BC. From the Buddhist narratives Divyavadana, it is related that Chandragupta's grandson Ashoka, while proconsul of Takshashila, was commissioned by his father Bindusara with the task of restoring order during a popular revolt against wicked officials. The official history takes pains to reassure that the people were not opposed to the Kumara prince, or even King Bindusara. The designer of Chandragupta opted to design the scenario with the premise speculating that the aging Chanakya, as viceroy of Takshashila, is faced with an uprising by the city's merchant class. Chanakya's forces occupy a portion of the city. The rebel forces, a coalition of Sreni, occupy part of the city and its gates and the roads leading to it. Ashoka, with a force of Maula, must rescue the beleaguered Chanakya. Suppression of the Kashas, California 274 BC. Though he was hailed as slayer of enemies, Chandragupta's son Bindusara was friendly with the Hellenic world, and was known to have had a taste for Greek figs, wine, and philosophy. Little is known, however, about the military conquests of Bindusara. He is generally thought to have consolidated his father's empire, but from the chronicles of Taranatha, we are told that Bindusara destroyed kings and nobles of about 16 cities in the rebellious Kasaraja, or realm of the Kashas. The Kashas, whose settlements in the former kingdom of Puru extended from Jhelum to the west of Kashmir, were likely independent principalities united by clan or tribal connections who chafed at Mauryan imperial power. The game sets the hypothetical battles among tribal strongholds on rugged mountain terrain. According to Sastry, the Kashas' strongholds were west of the Jhelum River, though the historical locations of these battles are not known. We have opted to condense what was probably a series of scattered revolt suppressions into two scenarios. Battle of Kalinga, 261 BC. Ashoka was the proconsul of Takshashila prior to his ascension to the throne, which he seized, as legend has it, as outcome of a fratricidal struggle that he waged after his father became ill. There is no clear evidence, but some scholars suggest that Ashoka is the son of Bindusara and the Greek princess Helen, daughter of Seleucus. Chandragupta and Chanakya had been hostile to non-monarchical states. Many such states, quasi-democratic oligarchies as well as republics, had been weakened by the wars with Alexander, and that weakness made possible the eventual hegemony of the Mauryan Empire. Thus, the Mauryans had always kept a wary eye on Kalinga, a large and fiercely independent Sangha. Kalinga had been originally conquered by Ugrasena Nanda, but regained its independence during the rule of Sahalya, and remained so until the reign of Ashoka Maurya. 8 years after his anointment, Ashoka marched on Kalinga. On a battlefield near the village of Dali, the Kalingan army was defeated. Records affirm that 100,000 were slain, 150,000 were deported, and many times that number died thereafter. It is said that the river Daya nearby ran red with the blood of the slain. After the battle, Ashoka ascended the hillocks to survey the field he had won. At twilight he saw heaps of dismembered bodies of soldiers and animals, heard the cries of wounded, witnessed the anguish of women searching the dead for their husbands and sons. As the story is told, the slaughter filled Ashoka with such anguish he changed from Chandashoka to Dharmashoka, and converted to Buddhism. For this scenario, the game uses two map boards as the scene of a large set-piece battle. The terrain represented is based upon topographical maps of the area near Dali Hill, the historical battle site and now a Buddhist shrine. Expansions. An expansion was printed in C3I magazine, published by RBM Publications, which provided two alternative history scenarios. The first, Ganges River, speculates a battle between the army of Alexander the Great and the Nandan army at the banks of the Ganges River, and the second, Magnesia, a hypothetical showdown between the Mauryan army of Ashoka and the Roman Republic in Asia Minor. Bibliography. Bhagava, P.L. Chandragupta Maurya, A Gem of Indian History. Chakravarti, P.C. The Art of War in Ancient India. Das H.C. Military History of Kalinga. Dikshatad V.R. Ramachandra. War in Ancient India. Kautilya, Arthashastra. Translated by S. Sastry, Mysore, 1923. Majumdar, Bimal Kanti. The Military System in Ancient India. Marshall, Sir John Hubert. A Guide to Taxila. McCrindle, John W. Ancient India as Described by Megasthenes and Aryan. Narain, A.K., The Indo-Greeks. Sastry, K.A. Nilakanta, The Age of the Nandis and Mauryas. Scullard, The Elephant in Greek and Roman World. Tarn, W.W. The Greeks in Bactria and India. Thapliyal, Kiran Kumar and Shivanandan Misra eds. Select Battles in Indian History. 2 vols. Woodall, L.A. Report on the excavations at Pataliputra. Welch, Stephen R. The Rise of the Mauryan Empire. C3I Magazine, ed. Roger B. McGowan. Welch, Stephen R. Scenario Book. Chandragupta. Great Battles of the Mauryan Empire. India 319-261 BC. Welch, Stephen R. Rules of Play. Chandragupta. Great Battles of the Mauryan Empire. India 319-261 BC.